situation where she was assaulted by a sheriff's deputy is on my channel. This channel. The man in that picture is one of my predators in this town. One of many. He is also very specifically, the person that her friends and the 14-year-old herself were stating was the problem. She had been trying to turn him in. Now, that man there did that at multiple locations. That time, you always tell me to move on. No. At that point, it had been enough times that he had done that. It was time to take a fucking picture. By that time, I had it recorded on my audio device that he was fucking talking shit. That he walked as close to me as fucking possible. And that's what happens if you're not recording at all points in time. It's when you turn off the camera that people are the most liberal with their bullshit. When they think nobody's listening or nobody cares. Well, nobody does care about me. But that 14-year-old girl, the man in the picture, is her predator and mine. I don't get to turn these things in privately. I will not be heard. I will be treated like I am a schizophrenic nut job who doesn't want any services. No. That is not the case. I am fine with going through the housing thing. The problem is, I need emergency housing so I can turn in my predators and have a safe place to do it that is not McDonald's or Starbucks. You get to hear what it's like making the phone calls in there. Now that 14-year-old girl, for trying to turn in her predator, what is she having to do right now? If they let her go home, she's having to normalize with that man. So not only is she victimized by that man, but so am I. And because of the situation with that man, with that 14-year-old, and that officer who assaulted her on my fucking channel, for Christ's sake. Assaulted her on my channel. That is evidence. But who turned it in? Who helped to turn it in? How many of you have watched that video? How many of you have seen the video Jamie again on my channel? That was the Dalles, Oregon. That was my safe place. That was the homeless shelter. How am I going to get help at the homeless shelter when it is run like that? He claimed first that he worked there while he tried to run. It was supposedly a child molester. I looked the guy's name up. He's not a child molester. That dude who was trying to run that homeless shelter parking lot like a prison yard, who punched that at-risk woman in the back of the fucking head. How is that not supposed to make everyone there intimidated? Of course they're intimidated by that. Of course they're afraid. Nobody does anything. These people are so afraid of coming forward, they get angry at other people for coming forward. Meanwhile, I should have never been stuck in public. I should have been getting actual help with actual abuse, instead of these guys trying to force me into situations where I literally cannot do it. And they know it, and they prey on it. The police here are as corrupt as anywhere. They're literally trying to run me out of town. They've been doing that since I got here. Just let people do whatever they want to me. If I try to turn it in, they treat me like I'm crazy and refuse to investigate. Oh! Why am I on fucking YouTube? They're supposed to have a caseworker there and present. However, I cannot go to these services in Tillamook because they have all been lazy and complacent in their duties. Not just towards myself, but also towards other homeless people. The idea is to run them off and force them to go to Portland. I was in fucking Portland. I was in Portland on multiple occasions. Finding Rebecca Gross Nickel Foley was important to me. Her life was important to me. Her being safe is important to me. Her being human trafficked in fucking Portland. Yes, that's fucking important to me. When these people who do this go and choose a victim, who do they choose? Street people, dummies. Unless they got a good supplier of fresh meat. That's where places like San Diego come in. Places like San Antonio. It's horrible. I have to be afraid to make a missing persons report because I have to go back through videos and listen to them all to even find the names of the people who are missing. I can't do that. Not in a constant state of panic, not constantly running around trying to find a way to keep myself legal with everything, and that's where all of my money goes. Keeping everything legal and driving to the free services that aren't free. Being forced to walk to these places when it physically hurts me to do so. Having to go in and out of unsafe places with my evidence. Having to live in a fucking pile of trash and evidence and things that are supposed to keep me alive. Blankets, jackets, clothing. There's also a lot of trash in here. Of course I'm afraid. Who wouldn't be? But I had to be afraid beforehand, and look, I still stood up. I still spoke up. I still told the truth. My words don't come together properly when I'm scared. But take a look at how we are treated. And tell me I have no reason to be scared. Selena Not Afraid did not die of natural causes. She was literally murdered by exposure. And it's legal. It is legal. Most people, when they first become homeless, their first attraction is what? Urban camping. You need to be close to the services. People want you to make a 20-mile trek every day into town to go to the services, and then immediately a 20-mile trek outside of town. They don't want you anywhere near them. And there's the people who are nice, but they're not good. Good people aren't going to help you turn it. Yeah, they will. Good people would help turn it in. They would take it seriously, and they would listen to the victim instead of talking over them. Now, with that officer, he was talking sure nice. Like a used car salesman. Even after he'd got caught lying, he just still wanted to try digging himself a deeper fucking hole. He finally admitted that he had fucking lied. It took him long enough. He can't do anything about other jurisdictions. He can't do anything about other jurisdictions. Well, he finally admitted that he could. If I take the evidence to him, he's supposed to do what with it? He's supposed to turn it into those jurisdictions, into the places that it needs to be turned into. Scott DeCosta is the sheriff of Dual County, Nebraska. When I tried to turn in the officers in Natalie Bollinger's case for all the crimes that they had committed, Rick Reigenborn sent that evidence to those officers. By his own admission. That's right, the sheriff of Arapahoe County knowingly and willingly put me at risk by sending evidence of the crimes committed against me to the very predators that I was trying to turn in. It was only a small portion of evidence in the case with Natalie Bollinger. They cannot pretend that me and my evidence were not a part of that, or that my computer that they never returned was not a part of that, or that the evidence from the evidence room, from the interrogation room that I sat in, I had to do so alone. And yes, according to Miss Peaches, aka Kayla Trujillo, and the conversations that she had with me, she told them officers how to get the best information out of me, and they did exactly the opposite. They intentionally antagonized me and the situation. They just didn't realize how intelligent I am, and by the time they figured it out, they were already fucked. You see, I'm told that I needed to turn in the crimes that were committed against me by these officers. I had to turn it into their superiors, at which point their superiors took immediate action against me for trying to turn in their officers. They did everything they could to allow their officers to move on. By the way, there's another missing girl in Virginia. Now we're going to get into the important part. Predators like this man. For him to approach me the way that he did when I was at the lumberyard here, actually I guess it's that way, that was highly inappropriate. For me to have to pull out my camera because I felt unsafe being there as a result of that. What did he do when he saw me pull out my camera? He went and stood there, tried to stand all tall and mighty. Oh, this time I got his picture. I wish I'd have gotten the woman's picture because I couldn't recognize her in a crowd. I was busy trying to focus on the crimes that were being committed in front of me. Now that man, when he approached me at the lumberyard, I made sure that I pulled out my camera, but I went and did my fucking business. I should not be too intimidated to go anywhere because no matter where I go, one of these people is going to be there, or one of their friends. Now that woman at Starbucks that I spoke to earlier, whose name I already had her mother's name, and I've got two of her sisters' names both in my recordings as well, from the recordings at the churches. Why did I have to record at the churches? Because the mandated reporters at the churches were ignoring everything that was happening there, and I had to be afraid to go to the police without them. I am an at-risk adult, for Christ's sake. I'm being taken advantage of because I can't take care of myself. I can't take care of myself because I'm being taken advantage of. I need to focus on two things. One of them is turning in evidence. The other is making a lot of calls. I've been forced to try to do this in public where I am repeatedly harmed because I'm forced to do it in public. I cannot do this in public. It is not appropriate to talk about these things in public. It's not appropriate to talk about explosives. It's not appropriate to talk about guns. It's not appropriate to talk about murder. It's not appropriate to talk about police brutality. It is not appropriate to tell on your predators. For the ones that did try, when did they try? What did they try? And what was the end result? See, the police ignored all of the help that I was offered and cut off from because of their actions and the actions of the Bollingers. They were interested in destroying my name so that they could destroy my words. And they've successfully done so. There's a lot of situations of police brutality that, in the very beginning, that evidence was destroyed. Why was it destroyed? Because that's the stuff people were looking for. And then a whole bunch of people would get on there and call it slander, or call it spam at the time. And then it would be destroyed. A lot of people offered to be my friends so that they could get on my Facebook and pick out little bits and pieces that they could use to harm me. I needed my friends to be actual friends at that point. I needed them to be friends long before that. I needed my family to be family long before that. A 14-year-old girl is being forced to normalize with her predator. Now you got to hear them, and you got to hear her and her friends in that video trying to explain to those officers who weren't hearing a word of it that she was being abused at home. They ignored it. One of those officers straight up assaulted that 14-year-old girl. Sorry, one of those sheriff's deputies. When I was in Hood River, I literally had to stand out in the middle of the road and scream at the top of my lungs for help turning in the cops. The cops showed up. They threatened, harassed, intimidated me, made jokes. Told me I had been a bad boy. I've been trying to get that body camera evidence, but you know what? All the services that they sent me to tell me that's not their job. They don't do that. They don't have a place where I can turn in the cops, where I can sit down with the evidence, where I can make the calls. They tell me they don't have the time, they have an overwhelming caseload, or I get some bullshit about how they're not allowed. I got a lot of legal advice from people who claim that they couldn't give me legal advice. I need help. I need help stopping long-term abuse. That includes judicial misconduct. When you tell on a bad cop, this is how fucking cops treat you. When you're homeless, this is how cops treat you. When you are disabled, this is how cops treat you. Without a friend or family who's willing to help, actually willing to help how you need to turn in your predators, instead of being denied the right until your predators realize you're trying to turn them in and they play victim. You get to see how people like Veronica Bruce at Region 2, how she wanted to be angry. She's one of the people that I went to before Natalie was killed for help with this. I was told if I got disability, then I would be able to stop the abuse because I would have a case manager, and when I'm abused, I go to my case manager and they do something about it. Well, my case managers kept telling me it's not their job. Well, whose fucking job is it? Why am I being sent to these people if it's not their job? And why am I going through the rat race in every state that I go to? I have to flee abuse by law enforcement. You motherfuckers. And this 14-year-old girl, for the rest of her life, because what happened there? It is recorded on my channel. It's a 4-hour recording. The mental health worker came right next to my vehicle. Now I want you to take a look at my window. You see that? It's paper thin. That's just a sheet of plastic. They came up next to my vehicle while I was recording, knowing I was recording. And they conspired to have that 14-year-old girl taken to the hospital on suicide watch, put in restraints, and put on drugs. You know what this does? This gives her the mentally ill tag. For the rest of that 14-year-old girl's life, anyone can literally rape her, call her mentally ill, and get away with it. What are her chances of cutting herself to ribbons over this incident? And you got to hear how her mother reacted to this. Her own mother. What they did was a scare tactic to scare her out of telling on her predator. And it will likely lead to her death. It will likely lead to her suicide or her being killed by her stepfather, who is her abuser. And her friends were aware of this and attempted to let police know about this. That 14-year-old girl never stood a chance. And now her predators are my predators. And I have to turn it into the sheriff's department or the police department. Both the sheriff's department and the police department were involved in that. So is Tillamook Adventist Health. One of the churches that I was intimidated at by the staff was Tillamook Adventist Church, Seventh-day Adventist. The preacher went out of his way to play stupid. I came to him about crimes being committed against me in good faith. You tell me to go to the churches, I go to the churches. They say, here's a sandwich. I went to mandated reporters like I was supposed to tell them about the harm that is being committed against me and that my disabilities were being used to harm me. And that literally the officers who committed crimes against me told hospital staff that I was schizophrenic. And those hospital staff wrote it down. But it's not a diagnosis. It takes 6 months. That's right, 6 months to be able to diagnose schizophrenia. When you are taken to a hospital for less than a day and then dropped off on the streets. No doctor could diagnose schizophrenia that quickly. That is a felony and it is medical malpractice. The same thing that they did to that little girl for trying to tell on her predator. What are the chances that that man is either physically or sexually abusing that little girl? They are great. What are the chances that they're going through a honeymoon period? What's this? You might ask. This is where you try to tell on your predator. And you're denied the right. The police give you the option of going back to your predator. At least you can see your friends. Or you can get locked up in the juvenile system because you tried telling. You're called mentally ill, so the mentally ill people, right? Yeah, the ones that you target the most. The ones most likely to be abused, and then there's the HEPA laws and rules that are actually used to protect the facility, not the patients. How the patients themselves are denied the rights to even getting access to their medical files. This is not acceptable. For police officers to diagnose me with schizophrenia, especially when those officers worked together to commit felonies against me, and then for me to be assigned one of those officers to turn it into, and then she's magically on vacation. Everyone is magically on vacation, aren't they? Meanwhile, my safety is not a concern to anyone here. Not one person is concerned for my safety here. Not one. No matter how much I tell them what's happened. Even with it recorded, they don't care. Do they care about the 8 to 10 times I'm out here in the parking lot? Might as well do something if I hear screaming. I was in a parking lot up in town, but that's where Farnsworth was able to get a hold of me again, because the church is here, including Seventh-day Adventists, did nothing about it. Nothing about it. Even the crimes that happened on their property. And the police wanted to intimidate me into what? Into not turning him in. Into not filing a report against Robert Farnsworth. Same thing as they did repeatedly in chapel. They refuse to look at the evidence if I take it in person. I don't have a place to organize it. When I'm told to go to the library, it's not appropriate for me to go to the library and do that. And I have had multiple librarians tell me it's not appropriate. But you tell me to go to the library, that's your great idea. You want me to go to the library. You want me to go to the library. I go to the library. Everyone in the library can hear me. Everyone in the library can hear my phone calls. Everybody in the library can hear my personal business. You force me into a place where I have to do all of my things in public. And then you want to cry and whine about your rights and your privacy. You get none. Absolutely none. That 14-year-old girl had no rights to privacy. No rights to turn in her predator. Her rights were trampled on by the police here in Tillamook and the sheriff's department here in Tillamook. Her rights were trampled on by her own mother, by her own father, and by Tillamook Adventist Health, where I was assaulted in January. The officer wants to ask me why I didn't turn it in 3 months ago. You know what? I tried to turn it in when it happened. I was trying to turn in crimes that had happened to me. I was trying to get a social worker there so that it was documented in a place where it is safe for me to document. Supposedly safe. But no social worker showed up, as always. They tried to push me on to Tillamook Family Health. Sorry, Tillamook Family Counseling Center. Now, I've had several opportunities to record Tillamook Family Counseling Center. I've got them recorded audio and, of course, on my YouTube channel. The thing is that they get in and out of there. They try to get out of there as quickly as possible. I have to set my stuff up in order to turn this stuff in. And these guys want to come in, real rush job, right before I'm supposed to meet somebody who's going to help me. Like, hey, I've got someone coming to help me. I need help turning in crimes that were committed against me. I get the real quick that they don't do that, and then they're gone. Or they say, is there something we can help you with? Well, you've already said that's not what you do, and the police have already said that is what you do, and you tell me it's not what you do, and the police tell me it is what you do, and then you tell me to go to places that I've already been that I'm trying to turn in. What the fuck is wrong with you people? I can't go to any of the services. In order to organize all this stuff, I have to have a safe place to do it. And that officer trying to insinuate and talk over me as if I can do it in my vehicle. You know what? When that officer is going out of his way to play that fucking stupid. I ain't playing that. They should have had a social worker there in the room. At that point in time, they knew I was an at-risk and disabled adult. They were notified that I was an at-risk and disabled adult, and they trampled all over my rights, as they keep on doing. And I have to remain nice and civil, but they never investigated it. They never investigated the stuff at Fred Meyer's. They never investigated the stuff with Farnsworth. I am too afraid to go in and make a written report. They want me to do it online. I can't do it online. I can't get a place where there's peace and quiet to do such a thing. I have to make telephone calls to places to get information from them. Meanwhile, they're not going to give me that information. They're not going to give up that evidence or my medical records. They've made it impossible for me to do so by forcing me into extreme poverty, by forcing me to have to trust other people who are not trustworthy. I have to trust complete strangers because police won't do their jobs. Social services won't do their jobs. One of them dumps me off with the other, they both tell me it's the other one's job. Same thing with the state troopers. It's nobody's job, it's nobody's job. And then all of a sudden, after their boys have fucking committed felonies, now they want the evidence. Now they want to see it. Now they're not just going to keep on pushing me off. Now that it is such an overwhelming quantity. And I have no place to process it. And they know it. That's what this 14-year-old girl has to look forward to for the rest of her life. Beatings, being raped, drug addiction to cope with it, or alcohol addiction to cope with it. She already knows now she cannot go to the cops or her mother if she is abused. She already knows now that if somebody tries to stick up for her, it doesn't matter. Tillamook Adventist Health is going to help them to lock you the fuck up. Inject you with drugs. Have you tagged with some mental illness. And now, for the rest of your life, you are an easy target for every predator in the United States of America. Congratulations. Congratulations. I should not have been there. I should not have been stuck in public to see that. But nobody cares. Just like that video, Jamie again. You see why it is that I have to be afraid to go to a homeless shelter. These services that I'm sent to, they're going to call these places for me, or already called them for me, or already pre-diagnosed me as can't go there. And then they ask me if I've tried there already. Yes, I have. Yes, I have. No, there's no fucking room ever. No matter which of these services that I go to. They ask me if I've gone there already. I say no. I haven't gone there already. I'm going to go there next. And they say, oh, well, I'll save you the time. I'll make the call from here. And yes, I record all of that on my clandestine audio recording device. And if at all possible, I record it on my phone for my safety. I'm sent to these places so that I have advocacy over abuse. Why the hell are we fucking with anything else? If we're going to mess with housing, but we're literally going to ignore every crime that is committed against me between now and when I probably will not get housing because it's a 5-year waiting list and they only allow 2 years on the list. Meanwhile, I have to stay here in my vehicle in an unsafe situation to wait on that list to come through. In this situation, I have been harmed repeatedly, and cops have done nothing but help my predators to get away, as always, or send me to places like CARE or Tillamook Family Counseling Center or DHS, but they're not working together. They're not working together. They are ignoring outright the abuse against me. When I go to the hospital and I try to explain about the abuse and about my pain, I was assaulted at the hospital, Tillamook Hospital. The time before that I was at the Tillamook Hospital, what happened? Officer Lotham was there. He's the one that showed up. Still no social worker. Still no social worker. And when I let those hospital staff know that he was one of the officers I needed to turn in, he should have left immediately. He should not have been allowed to stand there and intimidate me the way that he did. It was inappropriate for him to be there. I could not remember his name, and I don't know the name of the officer that was with him. I can't remember that, and I don't have his card to my knowledge. And I did, in fact, ask for their names. I did, in fact, ask for their cards. Kind of like in Chapel, Nebraska, I'm trying to turn in Officer Hahn, and Officer Hahn is the one who's repeatedly sent to investigate the crimes. Laura Nelson, she told me not to go back to Sean Holloway, that she didn't trust him. Clint Snell is one of the people whose names was dropped by what turned out to be Clint Snell's brother. These people know each other. They don't want to believe that their friends could do such a thing, and they're not going to hear anything otherwise. They don't have the balls to stand up to the cops, and for good reason. You see how they treat us. Even when they're talking nicely, they're bullshitting us. I am forced to flee abuse by law enforcement, by the Bollingers, and by my own friends and family. You're damn right I speak up. It's the right thing to do. If I had my own place, I could sit and make calls. And I did when I had my own place, now didn't I? The problem was when I had to leave my place and go out in public. Or when I needed to store food in my refrigerator. Or when there was any kind of repair that needed done. I was forced to buy a bed, because if I didn't buy a bed with what little money that I had, then they get to claim I'm not taking care of myself. I still don't have a bed in here. Does that mean I'm not trying to take care of myself? I absolutely am. You are asking the impossible out of someone who has been victimized out of everything. And I'm not the only one. That little girl lost her future that day. She lost any chance that she will ever have at a decent life. That will never be okay. It will never be okay that they did to that 14-year-old girl the same exact thing they did to me. Her safety was never a concern for any of them. And imagine how scary it was for me, having that unfold in front of my eyes and right next to me. Now that little girl has to pretend everything is okay. If They let her go home, which they probably won't. They probably trumped up charges on her. They pushed her to the point that she wanted her life to end, and then they victimized her for it. Same as always. That's what all of you do. You ignore the victims until they want their lives to end. And then you turn them in for wanting their lives to end. And we are harmed when you turn us in. And you do not care that you harm us. You harm us by allowing this to happen. And by doing absolutely nothing to stop it.